Hi, Molly and Rowan. Welcome to the next project that we are going to be working on together. Today we are going to be creating a Piet Mondrian inspired mixed media project. Mixed media means that we will be using different kinds of materials. So we will be using paint and we also will be using marker. Today we will first learn just a little bit and look at some of the artwork of Piet Mondrian, and as you can see we will then be creating our own printed and painted project. The supplies that you are going to need are the white sheet of paper that's a little bit thicker that I gave you. You will need the black paint that is in the container, the small container. That should be spread out on a paper palette, a paper plate. You're going to need the piece of cardboard that I sent home for you. We're going to be dipping it in the paint and using that to print our lines. And you will need your primary color markers, blue, red, and yellow. We'll be talking a little bit about our colors as we work on this project, and then we will be using just those for our final painting. So let's get started. Piet Mondrian was a painter who was Dutch. He was born in the 1800s and painted when famous painters like Pablo Picasso, who was Spanish, Monet were painting. When he was painting, he painted initially in a more realistic style, and you can see that here with his red tree. You can tell that it's a tree. The colors are different, but you still can tell it's kind of this scraggly tree. And that was kind of his first style and way of experimenting with painting. But as time went on and he was learning to paint and seeing the painters of that time, he played around with some newer styles of the early 1900s. And this is another tree painting of his, and it was done in the Cubist style. He went to go visit Pablo Picasso, and you can see that this style is just made more about shapes and lines and colors. And the reason why we want to talk about Piet today, Piet Mondrian, is that we are going to be working on a painting that's inspired by his style of work. As he continued to work, his designs got more simple and defined. And so this painting here that we have, which is composition number 2 in red, blue, and yellow, you can see it's divided by these vertical and horizontal lines, and it's very simply painted, and it has just our primary colors. Now, we haven't talked about the color wheel together yet. But as you can see with the color wheel, you can see how all the different colors are connected. So we can start up here with red, and then we have red, orange, and orange. When you mix these colors together, you get different colors. So we've got our red, yellow, and blue, which are our primary colors. All colors are made out of these 3 primary. And Piet, he would paint just with the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. Another one of his examples of red, blue, and yellow is this painting from New York City. He ended up spending the later part of his life in New York, where he had his final exhibit, but he would paint drawings and paintings with just this red, blue, and yellow, and do lots of shapes and simple vertical lines and diagonal lines. And probably one of his most famous ones is this Broadway Boogie Woogie, where you can see again just our primary colors, blue, red, and yellow. And he has all the vertical lines again, but instead of having them in black, he has them in all of those different colors. And when we look at this painting, it was like he was looking down from the top of a big skyscraper in New York. And these are like all the different streets and buildings. So Broadway Boogie Woogie. I hope you like that. I like to say that, Boogie Woogie. It kind of makes me smile. So that's Piet Mondrian. Today, on the other hand, we are going to be thinking about his work, and we are going to work off of his blue and yellow and red composition with the black lines. So we're not going to do the Broadway Boogie Woogie, but we are going to use that kind of idea with just simple colors. So the supplies that you are going to need, you need that white sheet of paper that I gave you. You're going to need your black paint. You can see that I have some purple here, and I just poured my paint out onto a paper plate. You can do the same thing. You're going to want your paper towel for wiping your paint on. You aren't really going to need a paintbrush, so you're going to want the cardboard pieces that I gave you. Because what we're going to do instead of painting is we are going to be printing our lines. So just like the example that I showed you, we are going to create vertical and horizontal lines that are going to take up the space of our white paper, and we're going to print them first with our black lines, and then we're going to let those dry. So this will take a couple parts, and then we are going to go later on and put our red, yellow, and blue in. So when you're printing, you want to use the edge of your cardboard, and we're going to be dipping this in the paint, and we'll start kind of in the middle of our paper. So I'm dipping it in, and you can kind of see the paint on here, and we'll start with some vertical lines. Now I know we've been talking about vertical, horizontal, curvy, all different kinds of lines, but we're just going to go ahead and create some of those. I'm going to have some that go all the way across, and if you want to think like Piet Mondrian, you want to think of your lines coming together and creating streets like Broadway Boogie Woogie did, where we have these spaces that were almost like looking down at a street. I hope you have fun with this printing. I always think that it's kind of exciting as I'm putting these lines on. I just love how easy they go down. And you can see the more I print with the same one, the lighter the paint gets. So I just dip it in anytime that I need to. And you're going to want to get, I like to get some spaces that are bigger than others. So I've got more of a square, and then a rectangle, and then a really skinny one. So I'm just kind of varying that. Okay, I had to be tricky to get that in. We don't want to fill up exactly our whole sheet. If you remember the example that I showed you, we had part of that that was just kind of left to the side. So you don't have to fill all of it. We'll leave some of it a little bit more loose. And I'm just going to keep filling my paper. So I have some loose spaces around, as you can see. So you can see I have a bunch of, doesn't come all the way to my corners, but I've got all my vertical and horizontal lines. We can't do anything until this dries. So we're going to just let this sit to the side, and we'll let it dry, and then we'll come back and work on it later. All right, see you in a bit. Welcome back, Molly and Ron. We are ready to do the next part of our Piet Mondrian inspired art project. So the things that you should have in front of you at this point are your dried painting where we did our printed lines, and you are going to need primary colors. You're going to need your blue, your yellow, and your red. I have both of these are Crayola markers. I have the thicker ones, and then I also have a thin one. But if you have both the thick and the thin Crayola markers, pull those out. It's nice sometimes to have different tips. We are going to be coloring in some of the spaces that we looked at in the paintings that are similar to the paintings by Piet Mondrian. And if you look at this student example, you can see we're going to leave some of the spaces white, but then we are going to be coloring in the other spaces with our primary colors, blue, yellow, and red. And like we talked about earlier on in this video, blue, yellow, and red, the primary colors, are the colors that make up all the rest of the colors. So we don't want to mix these because we want to keep these in their pure form so that it is in that style of Piet Mondrian. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started, and I'm just going to choose a section that I'm going to start filling in. Now I want to fill in that whole area, and that was one of the reasons why we made all of our rectangles and squares. We wanted to create little spaces that we would be able to color in. We don't want the colors necessarily to touch each other. So if I do this red, I don't want to have any of these red because I want there to be space in between. But we definitely are going to be leaving a lot of the spaces white because that is kind of what Mondrian did in his paintings. He had a space that he simplified everything, and he had open spaces that were just white, and your eye then is kind of allowed to rest. So I am going to do 2 spots with the red now that I have it out, and please note how I'm getting in there. I'm overlapping my marks to make sure that there isn't a lot of white in between any of them. I think I'm going to do my yellow up here. The paint is a different texture than the markers themselves, and you can see it helps you not to cross over it because the paint, your markers don't go over the paint well. My suggestion to you is to turn on maybe some nice music or listen to a story, like I frequently say, and go ahead and take time to fill in some of your spaces. I want you to leave at least half of them white, blank. The other thing I want to remind you is if you take the time when you're filling in a big space, always make your lines go the same direction. It just will make your filling it in look even. Obviously down here I'm going to put some little spots, but mostly try and do it the same direction. So when you're getting to this point where you have quite a few of your spaces filled in, you can take a break and just kind of carefully examine, do I need any more color? And I like to kind of turn it around in a couple of different ways to look at it. And sometimes that helps me figure out what I might want to do next. To add a little bit more yellow. I have colored in all the spaces that I want to. These other spaces, some of them are open, so there wouldn't be a good place to stop. Plus, I've done a little bit more than half of the squares and rectangles in color, so I'm liking just the way that these are, except for I might just do a yellow one right here. Sometimes it's good to see your space and your drawing and come back to it and add anything that you think might be missing. The last thing that you want to do is you want to grab your Sharpie and you want to put your name with the year on your drawing like we always do. So you want to turn the picture to the way that you think you want it to hang. You kind of can rotate it, see if you want it vertical or horizontal, in which way you like it the best. I think I'm going to leave mine like this, and I'm going to go ahead and put my name in the corner. I hope you had a lot of fun learning a little bit about Piet Mondrian and practicing doing a project with printing in the style of Piet. I hope you remember your primary colors, and I look forward to seeing your projects posted up on Seesaw. Have a great week.